Let's start the morning off with Focus on Health Law. This is a presentation of attorney Kenneth Haber from Bowie, Maryland. The moderator here is attorney Ramesh Khurana from the Khurana Law Firm, located in Gaithersburg, Maryland. On this set, attorney Khurana questions attorney Haber on the interface of civil administrative healthcare issues with criminal prosecution and what a physician must consider. A pretty interesting topic. Let's see these two attorneys in dialogue.
I have the pleasure of presenting Mr. Kenneth Haber, who is a very knowledgeable and experienced attorney having his offices in Maryland for today's presentation. And I am Ramesh Khurana. I have my office in Gaithersburg, Maryland. Mr. Haber is the former assistant U.S. attorney and the former senior attorney in the Office of Inspector General. As I said, he is very knowledgeable about the healthcare laws, and many of the physicians and healthcare providers, they have been beneficiaries of his services. I am glad that we have him in this studio and who is going to answer my questions. And today, in fact, I am going to ask him questions. First of all, let me thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ramesh.
Thank you very much for coming.
I thank you for having me here.
Ken, I am going to ask you questions about the interface of civil administrative healthcare issues with criminal prosecution and what a physician must consider. First question to you. Would you like to respond to it? What a physician must consider? Everybody is scared. Everybody is scared.
That's why
everybody is scared of prosecution and of you. You know.
Well,
although you are the farmer, you are the farmer. You are a friend here.
Now I'm a friend.
Yeah. But ex-cop, medical cop.
Ex-medical cop, prosecutor. Right. You're absolutely correct.
Right.
But it's that type of knowing that side of the business that helps me to help people from the perspective of the doctor, you know, the healthcare provider.
You. It's very helpful, very helpful.
It's so complex nowadays.
Yeah, I know. So tell us what the physician must consider in order to avoid any prosecution.
Well, he's got to, first of all, he's got to do his practice right. He's got to have a compliance program. He's got to be in compliance with the laws. But that's not enough.
That's a huge burden on a physician.
That's right. He can do everything right, but that's not enough because of the fact that A, errors can happen, and B, even if errors don't happen on his side, the government can believe there's errors, or you know, some private insurance company can perceive that there's errors, and next thing he knows, he's under focus for some sort of investigation. And the way the government operates through insurance companies administering the Medicare program, the same company, say Blue Cross, may be a Medicare contract administrator, and also at the same time it could be administering its own program. So if a doctor's there trying to handle private pay patients who are insured by Blue Cross, they have a unit within their operations called a special investigations unit. And if they think that there's something improper, that special investigations unit can get involved. That special investigations unit, you know.
That's very scary.
That's very scary. It should be, because of the fact that if he doesn't provide what they need, they can cut him off Blue Cross. And then not only do that, they cut him off of Blue Cross, you know, the other insurance companies can jump on, and not only that, they'll report them over to the Medicare side because they're administering both sides.
So what you say is basically when a physician is in that kind of situation, one thing he can do is he can be responsive to the requirement of the authorities, whatever information or documentation they are asking for. Just act promptly. Probably you want to engage the services of a good lawyer who understands this business, and he can help you.
That's absolutely correct. You need to be responsive, but you don't want to be in a situation where you yourself are making statements to these investigators, be they Blue Cross investigators or government investigators. The government has what are called ZPICs, and these ZPICs, you know, have investigators because their job is to find Medicare fraud and to report them on to the Inspector General's office, my old office.
Right.
Who can then report them on to the U.S. Attorney's Office, my old office.
Right, I know.
So in any event, it becomes quite a cadre. quandary for the doctor. You know, he wants to provide the information, needs to provide the information, but at the same time, he doesn't want to incriminate himself.
I know sometimes the doctor is so busy with his practice and probably he doesn't prioritize the requirement of providing documentation and information, and there is no bad faith, but unfortunately he gets into trouble for not paying proper attention.
That's right. If he doesn't provide the information, they cut him off like this.
Right.
You know, and so that he's cut off from his Medicare, which is often a big chunk of his business.
Yeah.
And Blue Cross can cut him off, or any of the other insurance companies can cut him off. Now the question is, how is he supposed to be?
Let me ask you one question.
Okay.
When you say that he can be cut off by the Blue Cross or some, let's say, Medicare provider, whosoever it is, so that means if any insurance company makes that kind of decision, which is an adverse decision to withdraw those kind of privileges of giving him some business, so will that be reported to the data bank?
Not at that point in time, you know, because this is like an initial point of time. You don't get reported for not providing information because you haven't gone through any due process at that point in time, or any significant due process.
I understand.
Now,
so based on the fact that you have not provided the responsive documents, so there is no determination that you have exhibited bad faith, so due process has not been provided to you, so that's why they do not put you in the data bank.
that's correct. It's not sufficient due process.
I remember you told me about the due process.
Yes.
And
Now-
attorneys like you then probably can reverse that kind of entry into the data bank if due process was violated.
That's correct. That's correct.
Right.
But it's not always easy. But
Right.
the fact of the matter is, you want to be responsive at the earliest point, so that you cut off the investigation. That's key. Cutting off that investigation, making sure that they know that if they spend time, they're not going to find anything on you. Because the more time they spend looking at you, the more they have to justify their time. So you want to interdict that investigation, if I can use that term, at the earliest point, but at the same time not put your head in the noose. So what you need is somebody who can go in, find out what they're concerned about as best as they're willing to let you know, and provide the documentation that ameliorates their concerns, so that they figure that it's better for them to go and look at some other pigeon.
You know, on the same note, sorry to
That's right.
interrupt you.
I was just
On
going to
the
say to
same-
pluck somebody else's feathers.
Okay. On the same note, I would like to ask you, for the purpose of clarification, when you say that a doctor should respond promptly to any documentation or information requirement. Now, when you interact with the investigator, you make some kind of out of the court statements.
Yes.
So when you are making these kinds of statements, are they going to use it against you?
They could. That's the difficulty. So whatever statements you use, they can use against you, because of the fact that even though it's hearsay, it's against your interest, and there's an exception to hearsay when it's against somebody's interest and they're being charged in a criminal case. That can be considered admissible evidence. And they don't have to give you what's called the Miranda rights, where they're Mirandizing you because you're not in a custody situation. And while you may feel in custody because of the fact that they have so much control over your purse string, you're not. You could walk out, you can ask them to leave, things like this. So therefore, under the law, they don't have to Mirandize you. So it gets to be quite a sensitive situation. On top of all that, you want to provide enough information to them, and you don't want to do this on your own. You want to provide enough information to them that they will know that you have done nothing wrong, and that whatever concerns they have are being cleared up, have been cleared up, and that they go on and look at somebody else. But these people are paid in terms of, they're expected to produce cases against people. You know, so that's how come you want to get it early, so they can go elsewhere. And you know, I'm just trying to think of the right word. You can say make their bones over somebody else's bones instead of your bones.
Wonderful. Now, let's get into certain specifics. Now, what are Medicare fraud control units. Can you please give more information about
Yes.
it?
They're very much like a combination of a ZPIC, which is a government contractor that looks out for fraud within the programs, a combination of the ZPIC, a combination of the Inspector General's office, and a combination of the prosecutor, all in one unit. All in one unit. And the reason for that is the way the regulations are set up, normally the unit is situated in the Attorney General's office of any particular state. And that they're looking at Medicaid programs, but the fact of the matter is there's often spillover into Medicare programs. So you've got a prosecutor who heads up the unit normally. You have investigators there that are trained, like the IG's office has trained people, which can't necessarily be said for some of these administrative components that are doing the same thing. And you also have the fact that you have a grand jury the prosecutor uses. You have, the ability to cut off payments if there's enough evidence to justify that. So it's a very, very powerful unit in terms of investigations of Medicaid fraud. Now, is it as powerful as the Inspector General working in conjunction with the U.S. Attorney? No, because of the fact that if the Inspector General is working in conjunction with the U.S. Attorney, you have more resources available to you, but it's still very powerful. You don't want to be behind the eight ball against the Medicaid fraud. You'd much rather do a special investigations unit of some insurance company. They don't have the opportunity to right away walk into a grand jury room. But what you do have normally is a professional investigator. You have a professional prosecutor, just as if it were the U.S. Attorney and the IG's office, so that professionalism carries over, and that's a help. Where some of these special investigation units or the ZPIC units, they're more like Keystone Cops than Elliot Ness.
Now tell me, you talked about the special investigative units. Now what authority have they got?
They've got the special investigation units of, say, Blue Cross. They've got the purse string, the contract. They can have Blue Cross cut off your money because of the fact that, but Blue Cross is just one of your providers. And once again, they can't just immediately walk into a grand jury. They don't have that. Like the Medicaid fraud control unit does, and like the Inspector General's office when he's working in conjunction with the U.S. Attorney's office.
Now, Ken, what is your advice to a healthcare service provider or a physician when he finds that special investigation unit personnel have a right to investigate certain mistakes which have been committed by him?
They have to take it as serious as if it was a Medicaid fraud unit or the Inspector General's office, because they can turn it over to these governmental units and present whatever the evidence they have and try to get them to run with the ball. This means that you need to get an attorney who can stop it before it starts. I had a situation once where a insurance company tried to get a client indicted. First of all, they tried to get his license taken away. We beat them at that. Then they sent it over to the FBI to get investigated, and we convinced the FBI that there was nothing there, and then they finally closed it down. So these people can be very, very persistent in trying to get a prosecution of somebody, and you have to consider it as
engaging the services of a good lawyer who knows it.
You got to be very, very serious about all of this.
Yeah. No, Ken, thank you so much. I appreciate for answering my questions in regard to special investigative units and other investigations for which any honest physician can be exposed to for certain bad faith or good faith errors, and your answers are very appropriate, and I'm sure that audience is greatly benefited, and thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.